Welcome to you. I'm going to be speaking of being now and living in the moment. It's a distinction that's rarely made because it's so much part of the spiritual way now, of being now. So many teachers, so many teachings refer to that it's become a bit of a byword really for just being in that spiritual state. And the truth is that very few people are being now, and even fewer are living in the moment. But we're going to go into that, and so you can examine where you are and how you apply these words, because words that are real have a quality, a timeless essence to them, which communicate to the very depths of us, and from that original place of pure spirit, pure power. But the word must be brought into the living life. The word must be lived, in other words, to give it some depth and validity. Otherwise it becomes another intellectual an intellectual pastime, Oh, you've got to live in the now, you've got to be in the moment. We've got to get into these words and apply it to our living life if we are to gain the value of the consciousness behind that word. So let's have a look at being now, because that's, as I say, such a byword in these times. Got to live in the now. The only reality is now. And that's true. Have to be now, which means being fully present, doesn't it? But being now is an experience. I am, particularly in the early stages, when the whole psychic system is adjusting in frequency to the new octave of being, people enter now, they're being now, and then they're not next moment. And so what they do, what the mind does, is the mind, it conceptualizes everything, the mind, and supported through the emotions. It seizes on anything that it receives, and it interprets, particularly when it relates to spiritual matters, because the mind is unable, until it has been transformed through a superior power of transcendental consciousness. It cannot help but interpret and make a concept of the pure essence or idea, whatever it's seeing. So it interprets the now, and it receives that power, but it tries to hold on. That's the point. It tries to hold on to the now. As it does with everything else, it receives some knowledge and it goes, I'm going to try and understand this now. I'm going to try and understand Einstein's theory or Newton's law of gravity, and it will utilize time, and it will make more concepts, and it will go into all this exploration of concepts at an intellectual level. It does this with the now. And so when people say they are being now, they're approximating that to a degree, but they're not being now, because they're still entering the now as an experience. And as I say, they want to hold on. People make the mistake, really, quite understandable, but they want to hold on to the now, which can't do. But I can't get to the living moment. I can't be being in the moment until I have made conscious now, being now. So how do we do that? I must not go into now as through any expectation of what it is or what it isn't. I have to be easy, in other words. I have to be simple. I can't go in, and this is what the mind does, expecting to validate, to verify what it thinks it knows. So if someone has experienced being now, they're looking to re-experience it. You see, that's the point I'm getting at. And so when they say, I'm being now, they're not being now at all, but they are experiencing it through their mind and emotions. So it's still in the past, even though it might be more real than most people who live in a perpetual kind of swirl of thought and speculation going into the memory, very rarely present. So life often has to come along in its wisdom and give them either a nudge or a shock to endeavour to bring them to their senses, to bring them to now. And it's usually with the jolt, isn't it? Oh, I was so shocked, I didn't expect that to happen. And that breaks down the continuity, because I can't be now, I can't be being now, if I'm holding on to any continuity of my existence, which most people do when they say they're being now. They're simply experiencing what they have experienced in the past. They're looking to reaffirm that. It's very subtle, but that's the idea. So I just have to be now, and being now is a preparation for being in the moment. Because every time I endeavour just to be now, to be present in the senses, that's what it means, just to be grounded, I'm here. And when I am, as I've said before, when I'm conscious and present in the senses, the emotion cannot move. There's no movement then in the psychic system. It begins to slow down. And that's really a preparation for the next level down, which is being in the moment. So when I've had some success, it's all good. It's not to say don't to put into practice what works for you. But we must continue to go on and break down any structures that form, because they will do. This mind and emotions, this emotional self inside of us, it will assume whatever is put into it, and it will even distort the spiritual knowledge if it can, you see. So living the more conscious life, I see that I'm being more now in the present, being now more and more, and that's great. But what tends to happen is I build a structure around that, and it becomes usually unbeknown. It becomes time laden. I'm not living in the true present at all. So we have to pull these structures away, these pillars from the temple, as it is said. After I've had some success, though, being now, which is just being with no expectation, being conscious, acclimatizing, becoming more conscious of the state, a bit like the mountaineer going up the mountain, isn't it? Getting used to the rarefied air without oxygen. Can't go straight up to the summit, because the whole body consciousness is not prepared for it. You've got to become acclimatized. So living in the moment is the now, but being released every sequence of life, not holding on to anything. Living in the moment is a state, in other words, and a state has no beginning or end, it just unfolds. And it never varies either. It's like in politics. The government, the condition, comes and goes, doesn't it? At the whim of the electorate, the people. But what supports the government, the state, never changes. And that's what we are going into, living in the moment. You see, there's the distinction here. So living in the moment is a continual elimination of now. You see, we're breaking that down, eliminating that, so that from one perspective, indeed, we can say, I'm being now, but I'm coming from a more profound space now, because it's what I have gained, this clarity, this timeless space in me now, is as a consequence of putting in the effort of being now. And I'm breaking that down. And I'm now living in the moment as a state, which has become the way of life, because I've put in the effort. I've been willing to do this. I've been willing so often now to interrupt my continuity, to check to see whether I'm being now, that a transformation occurs. And what happens is this, is that there is a change in the time gradient within my space, within the inner space. That's what happens. And being now is really assisting the elimination of time, of the past. And when sufficient power is realized, is contained, quite naturally I switch over then to a new octave of time, more timeless presence. And that is it's a spiritual state, it's a holy state of living in the moment. And then I don't have to exert any effort as before, but I do have to be vigilant and conscious so that I don't drop off back to sleep, go back into the dream. But is this not the way, the spiritual way? Well, it is the way. It is the way. Because it's total practice then. That's the thing. And being now is only a partial practice, as important as it is. It's so necessary to get into the state of being, truly a being living in the moment. And then it becomes, as I say, a natural way of life. And I know a great freedom then. And I see that all the effort was worth it. Of course it was. You've all experienced that. When a breakthrough happens, I say, gosh, I'd go through that again. All that suffering I went through. I see the virtue of it then. And that is replicated at every level in the spiritual process.